So, Bitcoin is going up. Is this for real or is it a bear trap? Usually, I'm not in all for bear traps. I've never really said it's a bear trap, but this time there's actually due cause for concern. And let me explain why. Obviously, I've already explained why in previous videos because there is a $1.4 billion sale from Genesis looming around the corner. We don't know when it's going to come. We don't know when the court's going to allow it. I'm going to say if it happens after Bitcoin reaches 50,000, we're probably not going to the 30,000 range. But if it happens before 50,000, we could very easily dip to 30-something thousand. And Genesis is a very big player. They're like the Gemini Earn people before they actually went broke. And that's probably why they have to pay back a lot. Now, this is where it all comes in. On all of this. So basically the evil forces at Genesis, they're like, we need money to pay back debt. How do we get the most money? Well, we can pump this crap up as much as possible before we sell it down and cash in on our shares so it can pay off our debt. Because we owed something like billions of dollars to customers and to Gemini, and the Winklevoss brothers aren't going to let us off on this. They're going to pwn us if we don't pay them back. And we have already lost the lawsuit, so we must pump this stuff up before the court order comes down so we can get as much money as possible. It's always a possibility that there are some big players pumping it up right now, getting ready for a sale that they actually need to liquidate and cash in on. So that's always a possibility. So there might be a bit of a bull trap here. And the thing is, like, eventually, when this sell comes through, we're probably going to go down a couple thousand points. I would still say DCA right now, and I wouldn't hold back and wait for a lower price because, like, my advice is always a DC and not DCA and not try to time the market because timing the market usually results in failure in crypto. So the thing is, I do think there is kind of like a throttle on this, and I definitely wouldn't go all in just yet because there is the big sale that's actually looming in the distance that will probably be approved pretty soon. But we also got some really, really interesting stats or news. Now, this has actually been making the rounds. This is Fidelity is now allocating spot Bitcoin to their all-in-one conservative ETF. However, people take this to mean that they're actually like buying Bitcoin for their non-Bitcoin ETFs. The all-in-one ETF is a combo ETF, and it's actually a really, really big ETF. I think it's far, far bigger than the Bitcoin ETF. And look at this. Allocation to underlying assets as of 6 February 2024, cryptocurrencies 1.0, and that basically is Bitcoin ETFR. So this basically, some people are saying this is the reason why we're actually pumping, but that's not the case. This is for Fidelity Canada, not Fidelity United States. They've actually had an ETF for years, and this has been there for a while. But the thing is, it could actually be like that they're sort of starting to allocate without telling us yet. I mean, it might show up on their next quarterly report that they're starting to allocate part of their US fund, and not really just Fidelity, but BlackRock as well. And yes, those big ETF funds are dozens of times bigger than the Bitcoin fund. So allocating 1% of those funds to a Bitcoin, that would be a massive, massive move on Fidelity and BlackRock's part. And I do believe that Fidelity and BlackRock, if they're not already doing this, then they might start doing it in the future. And that would counteract any kind of $1 billion sale. Even 1% of these giant funds is going to be more than $1 billion. So there's a lot to talk about on this. This is like fake news if they're saying like, they're allocating their American funds. This is the Canadian funds, which is a far, far smaller market. But I think this can give us a glimpse of what they eventually want to do with their American funds. And I definitely think Fidelity and BlackRock are looking at buying crypto for themselves in their own funds because they know that it has great potential for ROI. These firms are all about making money, folks. They don't really care about your regulations or any of that stuff. And like they will actually lobby Congress if they think they can actually make money. So I think some people are actually getting really, really hyped up about this. And I think it's a little too much hype right now because it's just their Canadian fund, but it's not completely unwarranted because the Canadian fund could eventually be the American fund. So, take that as you will. And realistically, like I can see billions of dollars flowing into Bitcoin from that as well. it's not only people buying the ETFs from Fidelity and BlackRock. It's Fidelity and BlackRock themselves allocating their other funds to Bitcoin, which will boost up the price of Bitcoin. And of course, the managers of Fidelity and BlackRock are going to want in on the action too. Remember remember the month of January 2025? That's when a lot of this could actually come into play, because that's when like a lot of these banks and financial institutions will be allowed in the United States to actually allocate part of their funds to their portfolio. And that could actually be what gives Bitcoin the top this time around. Not so much the halving or any of the other stuff, when these big funds actually start allocating. And so that's why we might actually get the peak in early 2025 instead of later in 2024. I still believe we're going to go to an all-time high later in 2024, but the all-time high is only $69,000. And remember, I think we're going to go to like $150,000 before this is all said and done. So that move from like 69,000 to 150,000, this is going to be part of it. Maybe the Qatar thing is going to be part of it, but there is a lot to get excited about. And I think more and more countries are looking at crypto as a positive alternative to the US dollar. They're not going to replace US dollar for crypto, but remember, a lot of these countries can't actually get hands on enough US dollar. So when they can't get US dollar, they'll go for crypto. I think that's what Argentina is kind of doing. Like the new president already said that USD is going to be like the official currency, but he's not against crypto, which means like in the case that he can't get crypto, he will allow his country's citizens to actually trade Bitcoin. So that's where that bullishness is actually coming from. Not that Bitcoin's actually replacing the dollar, because that's not happening, but it's like the first alternative when they can't get US dollars because they don't want to use their own currency. I mean, to people there, it's still better off using the US dollar because it's way more stable than Bitcoin is, but Bitcoin is actually better than their currency, which hyperinflates, so they're going to use Bitcoin instead. And of course, we have the supply shock coming with the halving, which is like, it doesn't actually decrease the supply of the actual amount of Bitcoin in circulation, but it does decrease the amount coming in from cells from miners. And if miners want to make just as much money as they do now, they had better start doubling the price of Bitcoin. This could also be like the miners starting to pump the coin's price in hopes that the coin would actually be high enough for them to stay profitable after the halving. I think I've looked at some miner charts, and only like one or two miners are truly profitable after the halving. But if the price basically surges, then after the halving, most of them will actually be profitable. That includes Riot and Marathon. I don't know if either of them are actually profitable after the halving at this particular price, but the market is actually just too big for them to actually let go. So they have incentives to actually pump the coin up. And of course, there's other countries in the world, areas around the world, where mining is a lot cheaper. But the thing is, like, it's actually a hassle to move to those places. And there's obviously international rules that make everything like kind of a mess to deal with. So they probably want to keep some of their business in the United States, but in order to make that business profitable, they have a huge incentive to pump up these coins. So that's what we're actually looking at for Bitcoin price. But the Fidelity thing is very interesting because they're already doing with their fund in a neighboring country, and they probably are just looking like red-eyed and like licking their chops to get in on the Bitcoin and crypto market in the United States. So I think that is a huge, huge opportunity for quite a lot of profits. And I do think, like, with all this stuff, like Fidelity and BlackRock and co, they're actually going to be interested in DeFi sooner or later as well. And that's why I think, like, the SEC is going to have to back off. I know the SEC wants to extend their hands over DeFi right now with, like, a new bill. But, like, the SEC is actually very much divided on this. And if BlackRock wants them to kind of back off eventually, they will actually back off sooner rather than later. So this is all like coming together very, very well for next year. And I think as soon as the funds are able to do it, as soon as regulations allow them to do it, they're going to pounce like crazy. And like, it's not only Fidelity and BlackRock. I don't think ARK and all those guys are wanting to be left out, and they're going to pounce on it, and they're going to have an incentive to pump Bitcoin. So this bull run might actually be quite a bit bigger than we originally thought. I definitely think we're going above 100K. It doesn't really make any sense that we would actually like be below 100K with all this stuff happening. There's not some kind of huge economic downfall coming, which would actually crash crypto. And I think, like, all the signals are actually pointing up. like both like the hard and soft signals, whether you theorize or you actually have actual buying pressure. We're all going up right now, and I'm gonna guess that we can actually pump up to maybe 46,000 on this pump, and then maybe if that court order comes down, we go down to 38. But that might be the last chance you have to buy crypto on the cheap, because it will probably get more expensive after that. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.